Hello and welcome. My name is Scott and I'm a sales engineer at Tink. In this video, I'm going to show someone who's never performed an account verification before just how easy it is to get started with account check. We'll perform one right now using Tink Link and 3 easy steps. The first being collecting user account information, the second authenticating your client, and finally fetching the report. Varun, are you ready?
Hey, Scott. Yes. I'll just quickly introduce myself. Hi, everyone. I'm Varun. I'm a product marketing manager here at Tink. And I'm not sure if this is meant to be a compliment, but anyways, I'll take it. Yeah, I've never really coded before in my life, so this should be interesting.
Great, let's get started. So to begin with, you're going to need to go to your Tink console. While you're going there, Varun, I'll explain a little bit about what the console is. It's your dashboard for everything that you'll need to configure within Tink. It's where you're going to gain access to your application details and where all of your usage reports will be. If you just log in, you'll gain access to that page. So
yeah, and I've already created an account, so just so everyone knows that I have actually created an account, but it's really simple to create an account, right?
Exactly. For those following along, if you've not got an account at Tink, you can sign up at our console at console.tink.com. It's quick and easy, and all usage after 60 days after the sign up is completely free. Since you've already got an account, we're not going to go through the registration process for this call. But now you're logged in, we'll need to go to the section marked account check underneath the product section.
This one here?
That's it. Here we can start to modify the parameters that are relevant for your business. Since you're in the UK, we're first going to need to change the market to UK. You can do that by clicking on the Tink Link button underneath account check. The market will be under the initial base values. These are the types of banks that you will actually be displaying to your end users. So for example, if you had Swedish banks that you wanted to show, then you would change this to Sweden.
Right. Okay.
The next step is the language you want to provide Tink Link in. In this instance, we're going to keep English, but we support a number of different languages in that sense. And then the final step under the first base value here is where your customers are going to get redirected to once they've finished providing their account information. This could be, for example, if you had a website that your users connected to and then filled in the account information, and then you did further things with their details. After the fact, you'd want them to go back to your website once they'd finished.
All right, so it could be a landing page on a website, or it could be some sort of screen inside an app that you end up on. Okay, cool.
In this instance, because we're not directing to a specific application, we're going to just redirect to our demo redirect URL, which is console.tink.com. And the reason for this is that it has a lot of really useful pre-built code steps to finish the final parts of this process. On the next bit, optional values. This is if you already know which bank and which username your user has for their bank. So if you're collecting information about your user before they've started the process with Tink, and you already know, for example, that they have a bank at Halifax and that they have a specific username, you could fill that in here and it would limit the amount of steps that they need to take once they've opened up Tink Link.
That's pretty cool. That's nice.
Since we're not going to be using this, we can leave these blank for this time being.
Okay.
And finally, in the third step is whether or not we're going to be using test banks. Since we don't want to use your real account in this demo, we're just going to use test providers, so we can toggle that on. And you can see when we toggle that on, the section under the fourth element, Tink Link URL, changes with different parameters depending on what you've got. This
okay, so if I change this country parameter here, will it change that too?
Exactly, market equals SE rather than market equals GB.
Right.
So that's how you can dynamically change your Tink Link if necessary.
Right. Okay, so I can change the language as well then. Okay, cool, clear.
So this is the URL that you'd need to present to your customers within your application, and we're going to open this up in a new window. So if you click copy URL and open up a new browser, this will take you to Tink Link. So we're going to use Tink Demo Bank here. If you select that, open banking, and then finally password and OTP. OTP standing for one-time password. So now we need a username and password. Normally this would come from the customer, but because we're using a demo bank, we'd want credentials. We can get that in the Tink console. So going back to that page and then clicking underneath demo bank, underneath account configuration, we can see a list of username and passwords for lots of different types of banks. Since we're using a UK bank, you can search for GB-, which will show us all of the Great Britain banks. And the first ones that are there, account check, is the ones that we're going to want to use.
This one, yeah. Okay.
All information will provide you details on this specific account. So you can enter your username and password here.
Right.
You can see on this page as well that the user in question is John Doe, born 1980, 1st of January, just for a later point. The OTP method here, we want to use text input. Click on continue. So here, the user would, if they had a device that they had a one-time password sent to, for example, a text message, they would enter it here. But since we're using a demo bank, we just use the OTP that's available on the message here. And then finally click submit. And then select a bank. We'll use checking account. It doesn't really matter at this point.
Right, okay.
And then continue. Great. We've got our code back after successfully connecting to the bank. And this is actually the end of step 1 for collecting the customer account information. The code that we've got back here is extremely useful, but we'll come back to that in the next step once we've finished with authenticating. So first off, we need to tell Tink that we own this customer's data and that we have the rights to be able to access it. This is for security reasons.
Right. So just to clarify, so in the previous step, I was simulating being a end user, being a customer, but now I'm going to pretend that I'm a developer, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So now we've finished with the customers, the end users side of things, and we're now going back to you as a business owner or developer.
Right.
Yeah. So we need to authenticate ourselves, and the first step here is to copy the first piece of code here underneath the third section.
This one, yeah. Okay.
This is an API call. If you open it up in a notepad, we can do a few pieces of amendments to make this work.
Okay.
So pasting that in, you can see that we'll need to amend the client ID and client secret here. You can grab these pieces of information in your Tink console. If you go to app settings.
Over here?
Yep.
Okay.
You'll see your client ID underneath the client section and your client secret, which has been blurred out. Normally, you'd never want to share your client secret with anyone, including anyone from Tink, but because we're using a demo account here, it doesn't matter too much. So we can just grab this and put it into the code here.
Like that.
So now that you've made these amendments, simply copy the entirety of this API call.
Okay.
Open up a terminal.
Yep.
And then paste that in. And then after clicking enter, you'll see a lot of text, but the only thing that's really important is the part at the very bottom of the text. That's your token that's been returned. So if you copy the part underneath access token.
You mean this bit here?
Yeah. And then paste that.
Okay. This whole section here, right? It's really long.
That's your password to basically say that you have authenticated yourself and that you own this specific Tink account. So we can use this access token for 1,799 seconds, which roughly equates to about half an hour. We won't need to get a new token for all of our subsequent end users that try to do an account check with your application. You could, for example, just develop something in the background that runs this API request every 30 minutes and stores it in your backend, rather than generating a new token for each request that you get into your system. But that's the end of step 2. We've authenticated our client. The final step is to actually fetch the report. So if we go back to the window that the end user ended up in the redirect URI, there's one more piece of code here that you can copy at the very bottom of the page.
This one here?
Yep. And then click, paste that into your notepad once more.
Okay.
So there's a few things that need explaining on this part. The first is the bearer token on line 13. You'll notice that there's another $sign that needs replacing. You replace that with your access token to show that you own rights to download this account.
And that's the access token here, right?
That's right, yeah. So if you place that in there.
Mm.
Final thing that doesn't need amending but is worth explaining is in the URL that we're calling on line 12, you'll see a number there that starts 1800.
This one here, yeah.
So that is a variable depending on the code that gets returned from the user. So if you go back to the redirect URI one more time, you'll notice that that's the same code that you got from when the user finished their account aggregation.
Right,
So
right,
this is
right.
something that links it directly to that report itself. So finishing this up, if you go back to your terminal and paste in this new code that you've created here, new API call, and then press enter, you'll notice that it starts to perform a download, and you have now downloaded your first report from your customer. You should be able to find this. It's called report.pdf, as we've named it. It should be in your user folder.
That's my user folder, and it's in there. Let me open it.
Your document in PDF form. You can note that the date of birth and name is equivalent to the name that we had for this user. And you'd now be able to refer that back to the details that the user has provided to confirm that they own the account. So congratulations, you've now successfully completed your first account check.
Wait a second. This deserves the. I'm gonna put on my developer hoodie now that I'm officially a developer. Give me a second. How does that look?
Looks great.
Cheers, Scott. This is fun.
No problem. And you too can verify an account in just 10 minutes with account check by getting started with our guides on docs.tink.com or just visiting Tink Console. Thank you for listening today. If you'd like to go ahead and try our tech, you can create a free account over at tink.console.com where you can start building an account check integration right away.